episode of the No Fun League. Today we're going to recap a lot of the recent news in the NFL, in the coaching world. We're going to grade every head coaching hire so far, every coordinator hire that's happened recently, and we'll talk about some rumors that are going around. To start off, the biggest news of the NFL this week, Ben Johnson picks the Bears over every other team that wanted him, including the Jags and the Raiders. He goes to the Bears, paired up with Caleb Williams. Ryan Poles is obviously still the GM, and they also bring in Dennis Allen as a defensive coordinator about 5 minutes after Ben Johnson got hired. So he was already working on his staff a long time before, and Dennis Allen having been fired from the Saints, probably easy fit. And the Ben Johnson hire obviously gets an A+ from me. He is the best offensive coordinator that we've seen in the NFL in the last 5 years. And I'm not talking about offensive head coaches like Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell. Just talking about coordinators. I think that he is genuinely the best one for the last 4 or 5 years, as long as he's held that job. He has revitalized Jared Goff's career. He has taken an interesting mix of parts with guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, who are extremely talented. Extremely talented. At the same time, David Montgomery was in Chicago for a couple seasons. He wasn't great there. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 5th-round pick for a reason. They are not your blue-chip prospect players, and they are phenomenal at football, in part because of the scheme of Ben Johnson, how he coached them up, and just the overall attitude that Detroit has. And I know it comes back to bite them sometimes, like that Jameson Williams interception last week against the Commanders. However, that attitude is why that team is so good. Now, I think the Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams pairing obviously makes a lot of sense. It is, if I'm Caleb Williams, I might be the happiest human being in America right now because of this hire. And you saw the Chicago organization. Ben Johnson walks in there yesterday, and they're all cheering. And I know that, this has happened in Tennessee before. It's happened in Washington before. This is kind of something that everybody does. It's a good social media moment. But at the same time, this is probably the best head coaching hire that they've made since Mike Ditka. And they did it on the anniversary of hiring Mike Ditka. And that's the last time they won a Super Bowl. So, I for one, am very excited to see what Ben Johnson does. He has Caleb, obviously. You got DeAndre Swift, who, not the biggest fan of. He did get shipped out of Detroit, so that might happen again, especially given his contract and subpar play. But you got Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, you still got Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet is on the team. And yes, the offensive line needs to get fixed. The offensive line needs a lot of work, but they rebuilt that Detroit offensive line into one of the best in the league, and I trust that he can do it again here. Moving on to Dennis Allen as a defensive coordinator, I think it makes a lot of sense to take a first-time offensive head coach and pair him with a very experienced defensive coordinator. However, I think there might have been better options available, so I'm going to give this hire a B+. I think Dennis Allen is a very good DC. However, he's been coaching for a long time nonstop, and I feel like everybody should at some point take the Dan Quinn route and just take a year off and reset and figure things out. Same thing that Mike McCarthy did between Green Bay and Dallas. Like, that's a lot of coaching nonstop, and I quite frankly think that there might have been better options available as well. You got guys like Lou Anarumo, Rob Saleh, Rex Ryan's interested in getting in coaching. There's a lot of good options out there, not even to mention the position coaches that you could possibly have hired. So I'm giving Dennis Allen a B+. I think he's a good coach. I think it makes a lot of sense, like I said. Experienced coordinator with an inexperienced head coach. It makes a lot of sense. However, I think there were better talent available at the time. And unfortunately, I will be on the Bears bandwagon again like I was this season. And then, they ended up winning 4 games. Everybody got fired. So hopefully Ben Johnson can turn things around quick for that franchise because those fans deserve it. Moving on to the Patriots, who have finalized their coordinator hires. They hired Josh McDaniels to be the offensive coordinator. Mike Vrabel bringing back the longtime Patriots OC. I don't know if they've ever worked together because I don't think Mike Vrabel was ever on the coaching staff in New England. However, it makes a lot of sense. It's the New England system. The Mike Vrabel hire was a sign to go back to that, to build around the coach instead of building around a GM or front office to give the power to the head coach. They're going back to the Belichick model. They tried it differently for one season. They were like, nope, let's go back. And that's fine. Josh McDaniels, from me, gets a B-. He is a awful head coach. He is one of the worst head coaches in NFL history, at least in the last 20 years in St. Louis and in Las Vegas. However, he has been a good OC in the past. Mac Jones had a very good rookie year under Josh McDaniels and his offense that helped him get hired in Vegas. So I think it's a decent person to be responsible for the development of Drake May. However, similarly to Dennis Allen, but more so because it's an offensive coordinator and you have a young quarterback who you got to develop, there are better people out there. There are such better people out there. Go get Brian Griese from San Francisco. He's the quarterback's coach right now. Make him OC. There's so many different options that you could have gone, and you went with old reliable. And I think it'll be fine. I think Drake May will develop well. It's just annoying to see these franchises be like, yep, this worked in the past, let's do it again. Because as a Giants fan, that's what we've done the last, I don't know how many years. And it just gets a little annoying after a while. But I think that's fine. They also just announced that Terrell Williams, the Lions defensive line coach, will be the defensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. I really like this hire. If you look at what the Lions have done with guys like Levi Onwuzurike and Alif McNeil, late round picks, they have been phenomenal. They have been so good. And even with Aiden Hutchinson being out and all the injuries that they had this season, they were still getting decent pressure with that line. They were coached very well. So I really like this. I think he's deserving of a promotion. The Detroit Lions staff is getting picked apart by vultures right now, and I think it's going to continue to happen as Ben Johnson builds out his staff, and Aaron Glenn, wherever he gets hired, builds out his staff. So that's going to be a stressful offseason for the Lions, but I really like this hire. I think it's a good young coach with potential, and I'm excited to see what they do with the defense. Him and Rabel combined. Kind of combined Rabel and Dable there. For the Colts, Lou Anarumo is your new defensive coordinator. This hiring gets an A for me. I am a big Lou Anarumo fan. I think he had to be the scapegoat in Cincinnati this season. They had to fire someone. Zach Taylor couldn't just stand by and not let anything happen. The team couldn't just stand by and not do anything. However, the GM and the front office is at fault for, every important piece besides Trey Hendrickson basically leaving that defense. Injuries happening. That defense still put up good numbers. Trey Hendrickson still had a phenomenal season. And when they've had a decent selection of talent, Lou Anarumo has had very good defenses. That Super Bowl year, that Bengals defense was very good. And they have been pretty good while Joe Burrow has been in Cincinnati because of Lou Anarumo. And I'm very happy that he got another job. He's one of my favorite coordinators in the NFL. And with the Colts, you have DeForest Buckner for right now. You got young edge rushers in Kwity Paye, Laiatu Latu. You have some decent corners, Kenny Moore. You have some young ones. And yes, it'll take some rebuilding. Yes, they need to put some resources onto that defense this year. But I think Lou Anarumo is a great coordinator to turn that defense around. Because quite frankly, Gus Bradley should have been fired a long time ago. Gus Bradley sucks. This defense sucked this season. So Lou Anarumo is going to inherit a bad situation, and I think it will be a net positive for the Colts by this time next year. Moving on to the Falcons, Jeff Ulbrich is their new defensive coordinator. He was the defensive coordinator for the Jets, then was interim head coach after Rob Saleh got fired. And I don't think we can judge him off of this year because of everything that went on, and because we realized that Woody Johnson is a sucky owner. Who would have thought that a guy with close ties to Donald Trump sucks at his job? But I think the Jeff Ulbrich hire in Atlanta makes a lot of sense. You got guys like Jesse Bates, AJ Terrell. You have young developing linebackers. You got young D linemen. And I really like this hire. I'm going to give it a B. Once again, just because I think maybe there were other guys out there. But I think this is a really good hire. And I think this is someone that will probably be a head coach in the NFL sooner rather than later. So while the Falcons have him, I think that defense will be much better than it was this season. It is interesting, though, and I think it's deserved to be talked about, that Raheem Morris, a defensive guy, had to fire his DC first year. And I think a lot of the issues in Atlanta this season were not Raheem Morris's fault. I blame that more on the GM. But kind of a turbulent first year under the Morris regime for Atlanta so far. Moving on to some of the rumors that are going around. Oh, before we get to the rumors, Kevin O'Connell also got an extension yesterday. He will be the long-term head coach in Minnesota. There were talks about a trade or something like that happening. I never thought that was going to happen. We very rarely see coaches traded anymore. The last time it happened was Sean Payton because the Saints still owned his contract, but had moved on with Dennis Allen, so they traded him, got a first-round pick back from Denver. I think win-win situation thus far. But Kevin O'Connell gets the extension. I think this makes a lot of sense. He's been a great head coach in the NFL. They have had a home playoff game once. Could have won the division. They were a 14-win team this season. I think he's a really good coach. I think the last 2 games of the season is something that he would like to have back, given how they went and given how the offense performed. But I think they'll bounce back. He'll learn from it. This is his first run being the number 1 overall seed or being close to it and not being a wild card team. So I'm excited to see what they do in the future. But if Flores doesn't get hired, Brian Flores, that is an elite coaching duo to have in Minnesota. Moving on to some rumors. Aaron Glenn is the favorite for the Jets. They have made a substantive contract offer. He visited with them in person yesterday, went back to Detroit on Woody Johnson's plane. They made an offer. They left things amicably. He's going to make a decision. It's looking like he goes to the New York and is the coach of the Jets. And I think this makes a lot of sense. I think Aaron Glenn is a guy that can come in and change the culture and make it better. I think he will relate to that defense. I think he gets coached so many great defensive players. You can get a good OC, whether it's someone from Detroit, who knows, but you can get a good OC and start building that offense up again after Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams, all of them move on, as it looks likely that they will. My one issue with this is I would have liked to see a former head coach go to this spot, just because dealing with Woody Johnson, dealing with the New York media, all of that requires a lot of just people skills, and it just added stress that a first-year head coach or a first-time head coach, it could derail it, especially the Woody Johnson part of it all, because once again, he does suck at being an owner. It is very, very bad. And some other rumors, the Raiders, apparently after getting spurned by Ben Johnson, after not getting Ben Johnson, they're looking at Pete Carroll, which I think is very interesting. I don't know how much Pete has left in the tank. He's like 70-something years old, but that is someone that can immediately come in and build a lasting culture. Like the Seattle Seahawks, they didn't make the playoffs this season, but they were a 10-win team. Mike Macdonald's a great coach. I think Mike Macdonald's going to be a great head coach. But that culture that Pete Carroll built is still instilled in that locker room. It's not like it's going away. The harmony between the players, all of that is something that Pete Carroll is very good at doing. He's very good at having a fun atmosphere, but also being hard on the players. And I, for one, would be excited to see what he could do. Max Crosby and him, I think, would get along extremely well. You still got Christian Wilkins, you got Tyree Wilson, you got some good pieces on the offensive line. I think they could do a lot as long as they find their quarterback. And he was part of the brain trust that found Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. So I trust Pete Carroll. He's always been good at hiring defensive coordinators. Offensive coordinators, not so much. But I think that he would be a pretty good hire in Las Vegas, dependent on legitimately how much do you have left in the tank at 70-something years old after you've been coaching for a very long time. And then lastly, something that I want to talk about, and once again, this was a TikTok and YouTube short yesterday, but the fact that the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have a guy that can be a top 10 quarterback, who have a great collection of receivers, who have 2 really good running backs, who have good pieces on defense, the fact that they kept Trent Baalke over possibly getting a guy like Ben Johnson to pair with Trevor Lawrence is the biggest case of organizational malpractice that we've seen in the NFL in a couple years. At least it's Dan Snyder shut his mouth. Because Trevor Lawrence is legitimately a good quarterback, and I know that this is a hot button issue, but he had Urban Meyer, and then Doug Peterson, great coach, fixed the culture, but injuries. Before he got hurt 2 seasons ago, the Jacksonville Jaguars were the number 1 seed in the AFC, including the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Ravens. They were the number 1 seed because of how well Trevor Lawrence was playing and how well that team looked. Then he got hurt and everything got derailed, and this season just was not good for them because Trevor Lawrence battled injuries, there was other things happening, and Doug Peterson was kind of made a lame duck by week 6. And I'm surprised he didn't get fired earlier, quite frankly. But the fact that you keep Trent Baalke over a guy like Ben Johnson and getting a new GM and getting an organizational reset is something that I legitimately think will haunt this team forever. Because I think at some point, Trevor Lawrence, after getting hit time and time again, after not having success, after dealing with Trent Baalke's dumbass, he's going to ask for a trade. And Trevor Lawrence will have a massive trade market. Yes, he signed his extension. Yes, it's a lot of money. But guess what? Quarterbacks don't come cheap. And rather than taking a shot at someone like Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, I think a lot of teams would rather just trade the farm for Trevor Lawrence. The Giants right now, if you tell them that Trevor Lawrence is available, they would be very interested. Same thing with the Raiders. Same thing with a lot of other teams. And you are potentially losing your franchise quarterback because of Shad Khan's affinity for Trent Baalke. And probably because Shad Khan wants Tony Khan, his son, to have a lot more input, and not every GM is okay with that, so you're going to stick with the putz that is. And that's what it looks like. And I apologize for being mean to Trent Baalke. I don't like being negative, but results are results. You saw what happened to the 49ers between Harbaugh and Shanahan because they picked Trent Baalke. He hired Jim Tomsula, for crying out loud. You saw what happened to them. You saw what Harbaugh is doing at every single stop. And the Niners picked Trent Baalke over Harbaugh in their power struggle. And now, Shad Khan, you're doing the same exact thing that they did. And your organization was already dysfunctional. At least the Niners have a couple Super Bowls. So we're going to end it on that for today. Short episode. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.